Tonight, the Duchess of Kent backs a nurse's protest.
The tragedy of a girl who killed herself after giving evidence in court.
How a YTS boy has finally won his helicopter pilot's licence.
And Steve Ovett launches a new scheme to find Olympic athletes here in the south.
Good evening to you. Nurses protesting against their new pay and grading deal today won royal backing for their fight. The Duchess of Kent, visiting 2 hospitals on the Isle of Wight, told nurses she was proud of them and told them to keep on fighting for what they deserve. This report from Nigel Burwood.
Nurses and midwives on the Isle of Wight were waiting with banners when the Duchess of Kent arrived. She came to St Mary's Hospital at Newport to meet charity workers, but as soon as she saw the nurses, she broke away from the royal schedule to give them a few words of encouragement. The nurses' cause is clearly one that the Duchess has sympathy with.
Go on. Don't give up. No, so go on trying. I'm very proud of you. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Sister Brenda Morgan, what did the Duchess of Kent say to you?
Well, she said that she was behind us in our cause for protest, and that she did understand us protesting against our grades.
So she doesn't think you get enough money either?
No, she doesn't. And she was very pleased that we carried on with our work, irrespective of our claims.
And the junior nurses were delighted with this gesture of royal support.
It's lovely, it's great. It means that she's behind us, and hopefully then everyone else will be behind us.
She was very proud that we were carrying on working, even though we were dissatisfied with our grades, and that we were undervalued, and that she was behind us, and she knew that the whole country was as well.
The media as a whole don't realise what is going on. They need to be told, and we need support from people like the Duchess to come and help us.
So the Duchess of Kent has given the nurses here at St Mary's a real boost in their battle for a better pay deal. Earlier, the Duchess had boosted the morale of some cancer patients. As patron of the Cancer Relief Macmillan Fund, she was opening a new daycare centre at the island's Fairley Hospital. Here she met the oldest patient, 87-year-old Hilda Early. Like the nurses, Mrs Early won't forget the day the Duchess came to call. Nigel Burwood, Coast to Coast, the Isle of Wight.
A 21-year-old nurse killed herself after giving evidence against the music teacher who raped her when she was only 12. An inquest heard today that for Lynette Parsons, the strain of facing her attacker, David Scrace, in the courtroom proved too much. Graham Bowd sends this report.
Lynette Parsons never told her parents about her rape ordeal. Subjected to a series of assaults by Scrace, the truth did not emerge until 8 years later when she confessed to her fiancé. Today, the family were too distressed to talk about her death, which came 4 months after she gave evidence at Scrace's trial. Lynette had feared no one would believe her account of what happened, but at Lewes Crown Court, Scrace was jailed for 10 years for offences against her and other girls. The coroner, Dr. Donald Gooding, said the case was the most tragic he had ever heard. Lynette had made 2 previous suicide attempts and found the ordeal of the trial so distressing that she lost 3.5 stone in weight. In a statement read to the court, her husband Adrian said she'd first told him about Scrace when they became engaged to be married. She later went to the police and made a statement which resulted in the teacher's arrest. But Lynette, who was by then an army nurse based at Aldershot, had a rough time giving evidence in court and never fully recovered. 4 months later, she took an overdose of painkillers while staying at her parents' flat in Brighton and died later in hospital. Recording a verdict of suicide, the coroner said he could not find words to describe Scrace, who'd caused a great deal of misery to a great many people. And he attacked his decision to plead not guilty at the trial, which meant Lynette had to give evidence. She'd been subjected to a verbal battering as well as the previous sexual one, said Dr. Gooding. The coroner added, "I can only hope that Scrace has a very long life, so that he has time to reflect on the iniquities he has caused." Graham Bowd, Coast to Coast, Hove.
Meanwhile, another inquest heard today how a terrified woman made a desperate phone call to the police moments before she was shot dead by the boyfriend she'd jilted. The man who killed her had already murdered her new boyfriend before turning the gun on himself. Mike Rowbottom reports now on the tragedy that stunned a small village near Wantage.
The families of all 3 of those killed were in this small courtroom to hear the details of the sad night of August the 17th. They heard how 20-year-old Stephen Evans had killed his former girlfriend, Christine Bradshaw, and her new lover, 21-year-old rising motocross star, David Denley, before turning the gun on himself. David's mother had told how her son had planned a romantic walk in the countryside that night to be followed by watching a video. Christine's parents had already gone out for the night. They returned to find the bodies. Stephen Evans' father explained how his son had broken up with Christine only a month beforehand and had been very upset by it all. He added that a gun cabinet had been broken into in their house and a shotgun and cartridges removed. These had been taken to the house at West Lockinge near Wantage, where 12 shots had been discharged, including those which killed all 3 of them. While this was going on, Christine had made a desperate 999 call. The operator heard the sound of a gunshot, followed by screaming, then another gunshot, then a frenzied appeal for help, followed by 4 more shots, then silence. David's death had not only shocked the village, but also the motocross world. He's pictured here at Matchams near Ringwood, where he was a stadium champion. The coroner recorded verdicts of unlawful killing on David Denley and Christine Bradshaw and suicide on Stephen Evans.
Well, let's catch up now with more news from all around the south with Christopher Peacock waiting in the TVS newsroom.
Good evening. Detectives investigating a sex attack on an 83-year-old woman at Haywards Heath in Sussex are to continue questioning a 30-year-old man this evening. He took part in an identification parade this afternoon. Inquiries into other attacks at Crawley, Crowborough, Hawley and Reigate are continuing. Meanwhile, the Foreign Office are considering their next move after talking to a Hampshire woman who claims she was raped while on holiday. The 23-year-old woman from Eastleigh said she was assaulted by a policeman in the Gambia. When she asked a British diplomat for help, she was told to return during office hours. 4 schoolchildren injured in an explosion at a school in Hampshire have now been released from hospital. They were showered with chemicals and glass. The blast happened at the Harriet Costello Secondary School at Basingstoke. They were carrying out an experiment to make chloroform. The boys were treated at Basingstoke District Hospital. The Health and Safety Executive are to hold an inquiry. A Dorset council is considering housing their homeless in the north of England. The Conservative-controlled Purbeck Council is to commission a report on buying homes in the north. The Conservatives say houses there could be purchased for the cost of just 2 years' bed and breakfast in Dorset. But a Democratic councillor has described the plan as barbaric. A motorist had an amazing escape near Basingstoke today when a wheel came off a lorry and crashed into her driver's door. The car was hit side-on by the impact. Emma Niven was driving on the A339 when the accident happened. The side of her car was badly damaged. Mechanics fixed a spare wheel on the lorry and Emma's car was taken away for repairs. Councillors in Bournemouth will consider proposals for a monorail in the new year. Following a committee meeting, they've decided to look at a video of the rapid transport system already in use in Sydney, Australia. They'll then discuss whether it's suitable for Bournemouth. The Gurkha Regiment's Book of Remembrance has been installed in Winchester Cathedral. The Roll of Honour contains the names of all the British officers killed in action while serving with the regiment. The book now stands on the north wall of the cathedral. Dozens of children have been sitting very comfortably at a school in Portsmouth today. The youngsters were taking part in a book bonanza designed to celebrate children's literature. 8 professional storytellers, including Hazel Townsend, entertained the children with their tales. More than 2,000 children visited the accompanying exhibition at King Richard's School in Paulsgrove. That's it from me. Nigel Burwood will be here with the news at 10:30. Now it's back to Coast with Fred and Fern.
Thank you, Chris, very much indeed. Coming up later in tonight's Coast to Coast, how a car smashed into a concrete block just yards from Prince Michael of Kent.
And why the truckers of Sussex are fighting to save their favourite calf.
But first, Labour's deputy leader, Roy Hattersley, has been in the south today condemning government plans to bring in a computerised membership scheme to beat the football hooligans. He says it'll actually lead to an increase in violence, and tonight 2 of the South soccer clubs agreed with him. Guy Phillips now reports.
Second Division Bournemouth are leading the South's attack on the government's membership scheme. They say it simply won't work. And their feelings were echoed by Labour's lifelong soccer fan, Roy Hattersley, when he arrived in the town today.
I think it's going to increase violence around football grounds and associated with football. Thanks to the football clubs and the police, violence is now on the wane. To bring in a half-baked scheme, which won't work, is simply going to encourage the hooligans and the thugs to turn up at the ground, not get in, and cause mayhem outside.
Bournemouth, who exist on an average gate of less than 8,000, say the scheme would be too costly and could force clubs like them out of business.
I can't see how a lot of the smaller clubs are going to be able to computerise, say, 30 turnstiles. I think it's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big problem for this football club. And so, obviously, it's going to be a big problem for the smaller ones. And yes, I can see football clubs going to the wall.
Bournemouth already have an 80% membership scheme. Along the coast, league rivals Portsmouth operate a similar limited system. Both clubs agree a scheme covering the whole of the ground would discourage the casual supporter from attending matches.
A man who wants to go to a match on a casual basis can't now go to watch football, and I think that's a terrible imposition. If football clubs could see that it was going to beat football hooliganism, I'm sure they'd be behind it, but we can't see that it's anything other than irrelevant.
The government, though, disagrees. They say First Division Luton Town have run a successful 100% ID scheme for several seasons and believe it's the route to violence-free soccer. But down on the south coast, they disagree. Bournemouth, who are going through one of the best periods in the club's history, could be one of the hardest hit in the south by the membership scheme. As they travel towards Derby tonight for their Simod Cup tie, their chairman had a lot to reflect on. Guy Phillips, Coast to Coast, Bournemouth.
It is indeed a very controversial subject, that, and we shall have more sport for you, this time from David Bobin, a little later in the programme. Fern.
A brand new car smashed into a concrete wall just yards from Prince Michael of Kent today, but there was never any danger to the Prince. He was just being shown the latest techniques in car repair at a research centre in the Thames Valley. Gareth Jones reports.
Crashes in his time, but surely not many where a brand new saloon car is deliberately driven into a concrete wall. It's the sort of scientific test they do every month here at the Repair Research Centre near Thatcham in Berkshire. The centre was set up by motor insurance companies to cut the cost of car repair bills. Here, 40 highly skilled engineers and craftsmen develop new ways of repairing vehicles. Prince Michael was here to open the centre's new training centre, which will teach 1,500 apprentices a year. The latest available figures show that insurance companies paid out £2 billion in motor claims in 1985, but they say the centre's helping reduce the total bill. And because of research at the centre, it now costs less to repair this car than the previous model. It's through cooperation between the centre and Vauxhall that design improvements have been made which cut the amount of time needed to repair a car like this.
It's difficult to say what the bottom line effect will be, but hopefully, of course, if we can train people into the right techniques of painting, welding and so on and so forth, then he will be able to do a better quality job in less time, which will make the repair much cheaper.
So what looks at first like an act of vandalism is actually helping save money for us all. Gareth Jones, Coast to Coast, Thatcham.
A youngster who started on the government's youth training scheme has just won his wings as a helicopter pilot. Although the YTS has been criticised by many as being just cheap labour, for 17-year-old Martin Hose it's brought real glamour and style. Mark Jordan now reports.
When Martin Rose left school and visited the careers advisor, the only way was up. He told them to keep their down-to-earth pamphlets on railways and car mechanics.
YTS, I said, well, really, I'd like to go into aviation, and they said, well, we can have a look round. They had a look round for us, different operators, whatever, and I started off with a helicopter company.
YTS has never claimed to be a glamorous pilot placement agency. They got Martin onto the tarmac, but with his feet still very much on the ground. How menial was it when you first started? Your very first days?
Yeah, it was quite hard work cleaning them. I didn't realise how many I had to clean. Well, I started on helicopters, then done all the fixed wing. Fixed wing a lot harder to do because they've got all the wings and everything.
18 months on, this is the boy made good. The oily rag thrown aside for the throttle of £90,000 worth of helicopter. Southern Air had faith, and now the passenger seat is empty as Martin goes solo.
Just got my licence on Saturday, and I'll be taking the family up, hopefully, just to give them a joy.
A joy?
A joy ride, yeah.
I'm very proud of him, really. He's gone from aircraft cleaning to got his helicopter pilot licence.
You're proud?
Very proud, yeah.
Chat-up lines for most 17-year-old blokes boast a driving licence and a battered N-Reg Cortina. For Martin, it's 45 minutes to Paris for a champagne lunch. Mark Jordan, coast to coast in Shoreham.
How fantastic. The truckers of Sussex are spoiling for a fight because the council is threatening to close their favourite transport cafe. Lorry drivers say breakfast at Barbies can't be beaten if you want a decent fry-up. But unfortunately, as Alan Clark reports, Barbies doesn't have planning permission.
No self-respecting truck driver would be seen dead in one of those smart new chain restaurants. In Crawley, the working man, in search of substantial portions of cheap food, makes for Barbies Cafe on the A23, upstairs above a car showroom.
That's my best side, all right.
Customers demolish full English breakfasts at £1.65, ham, egg and chips at £1.50 and tea at 25p a mug. When Ken and Barbara Stiles took over the business a year ago, they thought planning permission came with it. But now Crawley Council have told them to stop cooking and shut up shop. It's not in the Good Food Guide and probably never will be, but customers say it's the best breakfast for miles around.
It's a bit silly, really. There's only one cafe around it. We work here every day, and there's just this place to come to. It's the only place you can get a decent breakfast around it.
Well, if they do close it down, we'd have to use the caravan at the end of the road there, just a roadside caravan. That means when the weather's bad, obviously we've got to stand out and have a breakfast in the road, more or less.
Ken Stiles, who used to be a chef at London's Savoy Hotel, says he's not giving up without a fight.
To be honest, I was devastated. This is our livelihood, you see, and we built the business up from scratch.
You were under the impression that it was OK to trade at the cafe here?
Yes, we did.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, we're going to appeal, of course. Maybe something can be settled amicably.
The council have refused permission on the grounds of poor access and no parking. If the cafe closes, drivers will have to make a big detour for their morning fry-up. If the planners get their way, Barbies Cafe could soon be on the way out, and regulars will have to travel a further 5 miles for breakfast or go hungry. However, breakfast at Barbies will be available a little longer. The cafe's got until February to appeal. Alan Clark, Coast to Coast, Crawley.
I must say, you know, I'm very fond of those transport cafe-type places, particularly those where you can get pancakes with delicious cherries in them and things.
You like them for breakfast when you're
I
travelling
do, whenever they send me out,
job.
which isn't often because I get confused and lost these days. But you don't look the transport cafe sort at all to me.
Well, when I was a girl and I had a dinosaur for a pet,
A gal?
so many years ago, I used to work for a travelling theatre company, and every week we'd take out a huge lorry to move the set from theatre to theatre, you see, and you'd go with the lorry driver to save your train fare, and you'd be allowed into the lorry drivers' cafes and have mugs of tea like this and big chip butties, and it was stunning. And also you learnt that when you slept in the lorry, you never parked next to a refrigeration lorry, you know, because the noise of the refrigerator all night keeps you awake. If ever you had to do that.
Well, I tell you what, here's a chap who enjoys his egg and bacon. Well, you can tell, can't you? With the sport, David Bowman.
I'm on a diet, Edward. Yeah. Former Olympic champion Steve Ovett today launched a scheme in Sussex designed to help other young athletes become the very best in the world. The idea is that promising young sportsmen and women will be able to train in the county for free. Natalie Gray now reports.
Steve Ovett at the peak of his career, winning a gold medal in Moscow. He may have been out of the running at this year's Olympics in Seoul, but he still wants others to have the chance to follow in his tracks.
He came through and he kicked decisively. Ovett first, Coe second, Kirov third. The time 1:45.4.
Today he launched a scheme which gives young sporting stars the free use of sports facilities in East Sussex. He's now hoping all councils will follow East Sussex's lead.
Well, it's allowing them to use facilities without paying for them, literally, as simple as that. As long as it's not in peak time and things, they can go, use the facilities, and not just the facilities that we use for their own sport, but if they think that, say, in my particular case, that weight training or something would benefit my running, then they can use the weight training facilities if they're there, all this type of thing.
Sussex hero Mark Rowland, who took the bronze medal in the 3,000-metre steeplechase in Seoul, is equally enthusiastic.
think it's encouraging for all sportsmen. It's the first time it's ever been thought of, and basically it just seems a lot of common sense, really.
As for Steve, he's no plans to hang up his running shoes just yet.
I'd love to see Seb and myself competing against one another in this country. It hasn't been put together yet. For whatever reason, I don't know. It seems silly to me that you have two athletes like ourselves and Steve Crown and other athletes that we should get together every now and again and make it a bit of a spectacle.
Sadly, there'll be no repeat performance of this legendary win. Steve says he definitely won't be at the next games in Barcelona. Natalie Gray, Coast to Coast, Hove.
Well, on now to football, and there was a major surprise at the recreation ground when lowly Aldershot took on second in the table, Sheffield United. Steve Claridge scored the only goal of the match after 21 minutes. Claridge is currently on loan from Crystal Palace, and that goal gave Aldershot only their second league win of the season. So well done to them. That's it from me. Now it's back to Fred and Fern.
Thank you, Dave, very much. Actually, I should apologise to David Bobin. He is indeed on a diet. It's a seafood diet. He sees food, he eats it.
You are horrible. Someone who doesn't eat a diet at all. In fact, someone who's hoping the weather's going to get better, particularly for Saturday morning, is Carl, because he runs around the place on Saturday morning.
I wouldn't say run, Fern. I hang on to a horse's tail as it pulls me round Salisbury Plain.
Wow, how exciting.
It doesn't really show, does it?
No, it's a lot to go yet,
No.
I must admit.
Anyway.
I'll get on with the weather. Well, what can we say about today? I think the best thing is it has been rather mild. There's been a lot of cloud around, the odd spot of rain and drizzle here and there. In fact, there was even a touch of sunshine, but I'm afraid if you'd have blinked, you'd have missed it. In fact, the satellite sequence, that really tells all. We left it with cloud in over the country yesterday evening, another band out over Ireland, and gradually through the night and through today, that cloud's come pouring right across the country, and as you can see, another big band pouring into Ireland now. That's bringing even more rain, certainly into Ireland and Erin. On the overall weather pattern, there's a cold front sitting down over the country. That's quite weak. That'll come through tonight. But as you can see, the fronts are building up in the Atlantic. They've all got to come through. And by noon tomorrow, well, the first front's gone, another cold front coming into Wales, another one coming in towards Ireland. And it's behind that one that we're going to see rather colder conditions coming back, but probably not until Friday night. So for tonight then, well, it's going to be another cloudy, misty night. You're going to have the odd spot of rain and drizzle virtually anywhere right the way through the night. And it's going to be a rather mild night. Temperatures at the lowest, 10 degrees Celsius inland. On the coast, probably 2 or 3 degrees higher. And then tomorrow morning, well, there's going to be a good deal of cloud around, a grey, misty start to the morning, perhaps the odd spotted drizzle, but it will slowly brighten up as the morning goes on. And in fact, by the afternoon, with a bit of luck, there may be the odd bit of hazy sunshine in over Sussex, but it won't last long. Clouds will increase, and towards the back end of the afternoon, some rain coming into Dorset and probably into Hampshire. Your best temperatures, again, another mild 15 degrees Celsius. So to summarise then, tonight, misty, some light rain. Tomorrow, rather cloudy, some rain late in the day.
Thank you very much indeed, Carl. Well, that's it. There's no one left to insult except Fern, and I'm far too much of a gentleman, as you well know, to do that. So we might as well go home, I suppose.
Why are you being nice? I'll find out later, don't worry. Look forward very much to seeing you tomorrow night from all of us in this skinny stick. Bye-bye.
Good night.